Aha! It has happened again! I am alive! This is strange and still new to me, so I apologize for that. Hey, how's it going? My name's Rob. You may know me from such YouTube channels as Performance Check, and that's it. Today I'm gonna go live. I'm gonna go live. I am already live. I am going live because I wanted to have a bit of a chat about the hit role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. Now, as I understand, it takes a little while for this to actually, share around for people to get notifications that I'm actually live. So I'm just rambling, as you can probably tell. Today, I fancied having a bit of a chat about combat in Dungeons and Dragons. Why? Well, D&D, it is very much focused on combat in a lot of ways, and that's a good thing, I think. Now, obviously, it depends on the game that you're running, but end of the day, there's a lot of combat that goes down. Speaking of combat, once again, as per usual, whenever I attempt to make anything, Khajiit, my kitten, has decided to get into a fight with me, so that is very fitting. You sit there and behave. But before I get on to talking about combat, because I've had a few people actually chat to me about combat and the ways that I like to run it in a game. And I will get onto that. But first of all, I will actually talk about a recent development. I have finally bitten the bullet, and I have made a Performance Check Facebook page. I have posted it in the Absolute Tabletop and one-shot group as well, and the Brigade group. Essentially, because I really enjoy going live. I've only done it. This is the second time I've done it, I think. And essentially, I discovered when I was, when we were all talking, because it's a conversation at the end of the day. It covers some really useful topics, and it's topics that I feel shouldn't go to waste. So I went to see if I could actually try and get, the video feed of this to actually put onto my YouTube channel. But I couldn't, because Absolute Tabletop is a private, it's a closed group, and you can't extract video from it. At least I can't. So I've decided in future, from now on, after this one, whenever I go live, I'm going to be going live on my Performance Check page. I will, of course, link it through the popular groups. But that's essentially what it's for. So essentially, I can then access that video and I can put it onto my YouTube channel because it's good content. It is useful content. Not just from me, but by everyone who basically comments on these things and adds to the conversation. It is really useful, fantastic information that is, given. So there we go. That's it. But I can see that a few people have joined me. So let's have a look. I see Dennis has joined. Hey man, how's it going? Jacob Norman, greeting Rob Tab. Thanks, man. Alex Gilliot, hey man. And Locrius, my man, is here. Oh, dude. Oh, yeah, the Lore Master is in the house. Thanks, man. So yeah, we're going to do some fighting talk. Let's get some fighting talk down. So, I like fights in D&D. I like fights in all sorts of popular entertainment when I'm not physically involved in them myself, which is great. And it's... That's a weird thing to say. It's a staple of D&D. And it's exciting. It doesn't matter how, much, you focus on story, character development. At the end of the day, when you're playing D&D, let's face it, we all kind of want to get into a fight every now and then. So I've basically compiled a very brief list of little suggestions that you might want to include in your games. Now, this is also to say that I am actually planning a series, which I will be releasing on my Performance Check YouTube page, which will be essentially what I believe to be the definitive guide to running exciting, pacey combat encounters. But I thought I'd start here, because it's fun talking to you guys. So, let's talk about combat. So, the first thing that I like to try and include every now and then in combat is objectives. Now, obviously, usually in a fight, the objective is to win or not die, essentially. If you come out of the other side with a pulse, then generally it's a good thing. But objectives, yeah, there could be many different reasons why this fight is occurring. I like to have objectives because it adds a new element to the stakes, essentially. I don't want to spoil too much, but I run a campaign called the Lawkeepers, and in the Lawkeepers, there is a fight in the second session where my player characters, bless them, brave and hardened by, you know, a dreaded and dangerous world, come into contact with a fanatical group known as Advent, who have taken hostages, and have these hostages bound to a raft, which is tied to a gangway, which they are basically threatening to let loose, and then they will basically be rushed down some rapids and over the edge of a waterfall if they come too close. So not only did they have to combat the forces of Advent, but they also had to prevent anyone from cutting this raft free, rescuing the hostages. So it's interesting. I've just seen something that I mentioned earlier. I wasn't able to extract my videos from Absolute Tabletop group, but Jacob Norman has just said, FYI, you can grab your video from the Abtown group to put on YouTube. It's a simple 6-step process. Well, then I feel like a moron. But at least it has made me make my own Facebook page. Jake, you'll have to let me know how to do that. So I suppose the first question, because I like hitting you guys with questions whilst I talk about this, the first question to you is, what kind of objectives have you basically put into your combat encounters to make it to mix it up a little bit? If you look to cinema, for instance, you know, not every fight is just all and out people trying to kill each other. It's people trying to achieve something and stop the other person trying to achieve the same thing or a different thing that they are trying to do, if that makes any sense. I have now gone completely blank in terms of examples other than in the second Pirates of the Caribbean movie. I am not a massive fan of the second, third or fourth Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I love the first one, it's great. But there is a fight, and actually a 3-way sword fight between 3 of the characters in that film, where each of them are trying to basically get hold of this small chest. The objective is, for them, is to get the chest and run away, and escape with it. That's the objective, rather than actually trying to kill each other. Obviously, I think if they had killed each other, then it would have been a bonus, and they would have then been able to get away without being interfered with anymore. But that's an example that I mean. It is exciting because the stakes are changed. It's not just about winning a physical contest. It's about outsmarting your enemy. It's about trying to ensure that you are setting yourself up for victory in a different way other than just winning the fight out and out. I can see that Locrius, man, the way you weave in those other objectives into the combats in the Lawkeepers make them absolutely spine-tingling. Thanks, man. To be honest, though, I will say that the object of a Dungeon Master is obviously to put the challenges in the way. It's up to the players to come up with the solutions. So it's players like Locrius, my man, who come up with those excellent solutions that keep me guessing the whole time. So it is a beautiful dance that we all dance. I better work on my analogies, I think. But But yeah, it doesn't have to be that. It can be, obviously, like I say, rescuing hostages. It can be escaping, for example. Imagine if your players are trying to escape from a maximum security prison, for example. Their objective is to get out. If people are standing in their way, sure, they're going to fight. But at the end of the day, if they see they're outnumbered, overwhelmed, they're just fighting to get out, fighting your way out. It's a different way to look at the combat entirely. Or, another example, if they just need to kill one person. If your players have been hired to assassinate a particular character, it might be their job to strike quick, fast, and get out of there. It's all different ways that you can, it's different ways you can mix it up, basically. That's what I'm trying to hammer home with my ham-fisted analogies. Ill thought through, that's the problem. Yeah, so that's one way. That's one way. How do you guys like to mix it up with objectives in fights? Let me know. And I can see Jake's just messaged me on Facebook saying how to get my videos. Thank you very much. This wasn't really like a discussion stream. This was a stream which was actually a cry for help. Thank you very much. I am just gonna, yeah, Jake, PM sent with instructions. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I will now probably use this video now. I was thinking, oh, it's about fights, but I like fights. If you didn't guess. Excuse me. Ah, that's some fine tea. Okay, so moving on. Objectives. If you come up with any, whack them in the chat. We'll talk about it. The next thing I really like to focus on is things like tone and mood. I always go on about tone and mood. If you watch my videos on YouTube, it's I hate to sound repetitive, but it is really one of the best tools to use when trying to portray a certain, mood in a game. For example, if you are wanting the players to get into a bar fight, or they just get into a bar fight, okay, you want to make it dirty, gritty, underhanded. You got to describe that essentially there are no holds barred. Like, people don't care about honor. They just want to smash your head in with whatever they can grab at the time. A chair, a table, a tankard. Or if it's going to be like a last stand, for example, you can instill a sense of dread and fear into your players that they are completely outnumbered and they've got their backs to the wall. Instead, you will go for a very much like the death of Boromir, for example. It's a last stand. It's essentially the, you go out fighting and you can really play up to the, those elements of, giving your all before, your swan song, as it were. Or you can do what I like to call the Batman, when you want to make your players feel epic. And I call it the Batman because if you're a fan of Batman, you will know that he is a masterful combatant, rivaled by not many at all. Batman will go in to a room full of 20 people and he will just devastate them. He will just completely annihilate them and the thing is, like, with Batman that I love, I'm obviously a huge fan of Batman, it's all about economy of movement, it's all about thinking tactically, and you can really help your players feel that way, feel like Batman, if you have them go up against a whole bunch of people that are beneath their ability. That's something I like to do every now and then, just to show them how far they've progressed in terms of, leveling their character. You then throw them against things that they maybe fought earlier in the campaign, and now they're wading through them, deflecting attacks, ducking beneath overarching swings and countering, that sort of thing. That's a really good way, I find, to make players feel a bit more a bit more rewarded by their actual mechanical progression, but in a narrative way. Dennis Kellogg. I've not GM'd in a while, but my favourite moment was in a GURPS fantasy game, where the party was in a stronghold to which a bunch of civilians were fleeing to, being chased by a horde of zombies and skeletons. It became obvious that without some intervention, the civilians would... You know what, Dennis? It's done that thing where it trails off. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I think I've seen it happen on a few of these like things. After a little while, the comment just stops. So, that without some intervention, the civilians would what? If you would kindly let me know what that is, because I've opened the comment. It says "see more," and then it ends. That's really upsetting. But I mean, that's another really great thing. Like, I mean, that's. To me, that sounds like, you know, they were escaping. You're basically helping people escape. So, like, that's a good example. So if you look to the Two Towers in Lord of the Rings, there is a moment where the Rohirrim are essentially fleeing to Helm's Deep. And with them are women and children. And Saruman sends out the Warg Riders to attack them. So it is their job to not only ensure that they get to Helm's Deep, but protect the civilians that they have with them as they make their retreat, which is a really good, example. I suppose in that you could have like waves of different enemies attacking. I mean, that's a really cool thing to consider, like the fatigue of combat as well. Like, can you imagine if, I've been in a few games and I've run a few different games where you've had your players be in a really big fight, and, they've bested them and it's been like pretty tricky, and then more show up. I remember I had a really nasty gelatinous cube. And I call them G cubes, bless them. I had a G cube drop down on the players, and they were fighting for ages, and they were hating it because obviously it's acidic, like it tries to like swallow them up in its mass. And they finally beat this thing, and then they're about to continue, and then they sort of look up and they see that this G cube was a baby G cube, and whatever it had formed out of another G cube, a larger G cube, which then landed in front of them, and then they had to fight the mummy. So yeah, that's pretty cool. It's showing that fatigue, allowing them to think, oh my god, this is insane. But I suppose the flip side to that is that you don't want your combats to last a ridiculously long time. Because I feel then real player fatigue then actually factors in there, where people are like, "Oh my god, when is this fight going to end?" So you've got to play it careful. I mean, it's a good thing because on one hand you're forcing your spellcasters, for instance, who are basically running out of spells, to try and think a bit more creatively. They can't just use their usual combo of spells. But at the same time, it might get a bit dull. So you've just got to really gauge it and see, how your gaming group like it, to be fair. Dennis has continued. The civilians would be overrun, so they had to either stay in the fortress and watch the civilians and watch this happen, or charge out and meet the horde. Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's in defense of others, which I think is a really, really great thing to have. And again, it's different stakes. It's okay for your player characters to feel invincible against certain things, but other people aren't as invincible, so they're going to have to obviously look out for them. So yeah, another thing that I like to do is I like to focus on the emotion of a fight. At the end of the day, we're talking about a situation where in D&D, if you're getting into a fight, generally someone is going to bite the bullet, someone's going to kick the bucket, someone's going to die, which isn't great, and people know that. So you should show that with your enemies. I always like to focus on, like, if a player makes a successful attack, say, I don't know, Marius Hexenheim from the Lawkeepers. Marius makes a successful attack with his hammer, and he smashes through the defenses of this silver guard, and he can see through the visor of the silver guard's helmet the look of fear in his eyes. It makes just hitting someone feel like you've had an effect on them. If you've just been hit by something, you're obviously going to emote. You're going to show that you are obviously, one, in pain, and two, fearful that you're going to get hit again, and this time you might not get up. It's also good the other way. If an enemy hits a player character, to show triumph in their eyes, to show, haha, that I've got you, to show that victory is perhaps within their grasp. If you show that an enemy combatant is, boasting, arrogant almost, it's gonna make the players want to hit them more. It makes them invest in the fight more. To wipe the smug smile off their face. And it's going to make them also maybe rethink. Maybe if this person is really confident in a fight, maybe they're really good. Maybe they're better than me. You're dealing with a lot of uncertainty in a fight, and it's really good to play on that. Dennis, once again, I like the relentless situation where you are being harried, especially several small groups of enemies that might not normally be a threat, but without rest and healing, you slowly get worn down. Absolutely. Like, it's the, yeah. And I suppose that's something that you'd come across in, like, mass combat, particularly as well, like you're saying, with lots of enemies. Like, after a while, it would get tiring. If you think of, like, the weaponry that we're talking about as well, we're talking about great swords, we're talking about warhammers and stuff, swinging those around, and I can speak with experience because I've done a bunch of stage combat in my career. I can speak from experience that when you're swinging one of those around for, like, 5-10 minutes, you'll feel it. So imagine a fight that is going to be lasting like a day, like a battle would. It's you've got a whole day of fighting. You're going to be absolutely exhausted, and it is something that you can play up to really good effect. Lloyd, my boy. I was just speaking about your character, Lloyd. I try get through combat swiftly, as I find it the least interesting part of the game. That's fair. A lot of people don't find it super interesting, and it's about gauging, what interests your players in all aspects of the game. Obviously, excuse me one moment. Nice cup of tea. Yeah, I completely agree, Lloyd. Like, it isn't everyone's cup of tea. I like to ensure that my combats are pretty quick. Like, sometimes you can't help it. Like, if you want there to be a particular enemy that isn't going to be as much of a pushover, sometimes the combat will, for one reason or another, last longer than usual. And I think the trick to that is by having certain levels in your fight. Like, if you imagine it like a scene, or if you imagine it like a piece of music, there are rises, there are falls. There are times where the heroes think they're winning, there are times when they know they're losing. It's about making it interesting on more than just a mechanical level. It's about going in depth as to what the characters are feeling, what they're thinking. And this leads me to my other thing, and this is something that I don't see that often, which I try and do, and I think it is really good for keeping your players engaged. Essentially, when you're in combat, you do your turn in D&D, and then that's it. You're then open to attack from the other enemies, and you're waiting for the rest of the party to do their turns as well. What I like to do is, if I have an enemy that... in fact, Marius Hexenheim is a really good example, because I think I have asked Lloyd this before in a Lawkeepers game. If the enemy fails on an attack roll and misses, I hate misses. They shouldn't miss, okay? it isn't really hard to miss someone, okay? What is better is if you ask your player how they defend themselves. Because it's all right you being, if you're a good combatant, if you're a good fighter, you are obviously adept at attacking. It also means you are adept at defending yourselves. If you are an extremely dexterous character and your enemy NPC swings at your player, misses, say to them, how do you dodge? How do you duck out of the way of this? Because it's not their turn, but they're still then being able to describe a small moment of the combat which they are in control of. That character is in control of how they are, looking out for themselves. You are an experienced fighter. This being has smashed against your defenses and failed. Tell me, how do you deflect the attack that would have slain a lesser being? It's just giving your players more, more of the dynamic to deal with. It's asking them, not just how they attack, how they look after themselves as well. Because I think it's interesting. Like, for instance, if I'm playing a video game and it's like a fighting game, okay, I will be really upset if there isn't a dodge or block button or a counter button. Particularly, I like counters. But anyway, just looking to the chat. Dennis. Or you are traveling through orc territory. Absolutely. Like, if you are traveling through a particularly hazardous environment where you are likely to encounter a whole bunch of enemies. Speaking of Lloyd, I'm making this all about Lloyd today. Recently played in a Lord of the Rings game, Adventures in Middle-earth. Don't particularly want to spoil it because you should go and watch it on YalDM on YouTube. But big fan of Lord of the Rings. It's a great system. Lloyd runs it immaculately. And essentially we saw a pack of warg riders, talking about warg riders earlier, riding by, and some of the party saw it necessary to pursue them. I was of the opinion that we should let them go, but that's a conversation for another time. So we pursue these two warg riders and we take one of them out. And long story short, it gets messy and it gets loud, and more orcs are summoned. And a particularly vicious battle erupts. And it's all because of a decision we made in combat. It's all because of mistakes that were made. Or not necessarily... I thought it was a mistake, but it led to a really cool encounter. So, who am I to complain? But it's not only obviously having entertaining combats, but it's also showing the fallout of such a thing. If, for example, you get into a particularly vicious fight at a tavern and someone ends up dead, then that's going to reflect on the situation that your party are in. So, I'm going to ask you guys once again. So, we've talked about objectives in combat. Are there any key objectives that you like to throw in? Is there any way that you like to set a particular mood, whether it be a last stand, whether it be, gritty, foul play, bar fight, whether you're doing the Batman and they are completely owning 20 people in a room? And how would you like to convey emotion in a battle? How would you like to show people that they're winning? How would you like to show people that they're losing? And what do you think about defense as well? To continue talking about defense, I know that there's some people out there who have, like, I think it's like a variant rule, I'm not sure, but you roll for your defense. I'm not such a fan of that because I think that slows the game down. I like to ensure, like I was saying before, I like to ensure that my fights are pacey. Asking for another roll, asking for more maths, essentially can slow that down. So I think just asking how someone defends themselves is as important as asking how someone attacks. Because it's a fight and you need to be doing both. Another thing I'm going to be talking about, and I'm going over these very, very briefly because, as I mentioned before, I am hopefully going to be beginning a definitive guide to combat in role-playing games. It's something that I take great joy in making sure that it's exciting rather than you just rolling a number and then bashing that number against another number. But another thing is the locations. It's the locale where people are having a fight. Now, you're not going to be in an epic location every time you're in a fight. However, if you want it to be a particularly memorable fight, a fight that is the culmination of a session or the culmination of a campaign, then it can be fitting for you to think about the, where you're actually fighting. I will move on to that in a moment. I'm just going to have a sip of tea, and I can see Chris has just left a comment, so bear with me. Chris Wilhelm from Drop Dice says, rolling for defense doesn't slow things much. You roll when the players roll at the same time. Oh, I suppose, yeah. It's really down to personal taste. I'm happy with, AC. I think it just makes it simpler. If people are ready and, they're wanting to, make sure that they do that, then that's absolutely fine. Again, it's all down to, obviously, personal preferences within your gaming group. So yeah, combat locations. Yeah, I mean, if you've seen Lawkeepers, like, generally I try and make it a bit of a spectacle, I'll be honest. Like, I usually like to have some kind of environmental element to a fight. Not all the time, but like the first session, they are fighting on a particularly large bridge that is sundered in the middle, and there's only a few narrow paths across it, which adds an element of danger. Now, there are some elements that you can, you can include that might be too dangerous. For example, in a session 1, it might be, ill-advised to put your players in a situation where if they fall, I mean, I really made a point of saying this bridge is massive. So if you fall off something like that, you're going to die, especially if you're a low-level character. So is it a risk worth taking? Absolutely it is. You just have to be completely open and understanding with your players trying to resolve any issues regarding them falling over the edge, for example. And it is a little trick of mine that I call the safety net. Which is quite fitting, I suppose, for this example, considering we're talking about falling. There is a moment in the Lawkeepers, and I don't mind talking about this summon so much because this is in the first session. It was out in August. You should go check it out if you haven't, because it's a really great game with some great players. There is a fight on this bridge called the Cloud March. And it's towards the end of the encounter, and the objective of this fight was not to win, but to escape with a book. And the terrain about them begins to collapse due to things that happen in the fight that I won't go into. The bridge around them is beginning to crumble, and the party are running. And I ask for dexterity saving throws because, the ground is collapsing beneath their feet. And the rest make it, apart from Locrius's character, Azarax, who drops and disappears from view. Now, if I hadn't set this up beforehand, it would have been me being a bit hand of God, Deus Ex, It would have been a bit, really? I said that essentially that Azarax had fallen, but had landed in some vines and old scaffolding that hang beneath the Cloud March. Now, I had intentionally, before the combat even began, had mentioned that there were vines and scaffolding beneath the Cloud March. For just the occasion that if one of them happened to go over, there was always a last chance. There was always going to be a way to help them through this encounter should the worst happen, because it's session 1 and I don't particularly want them to die. So as long as you set up your safety net and set it up in the players' minds, stating, beneath the Cloud March, vines and old scaffolding hang beneath it as a testament to the work that went on here long ago. That's all you need to say. Now you've got yourself a safety net, so if they fall off, you don't have to worry about seeming like you're intervening unfairly within that game. So by all means, go big with your environments, but always make sure that you have at least something for the players to use to regain the advantage, where they aren't just instantly killed by the extremes of the environment you've just placed them in. Because that ain't cricket. Let's see. Dennis is on it today. Thank you for watching, Dennis. You're a star. That was the exact thing I was thinking about, that scene in Lloyd's game. Yeah, man, like, the orc invested territory. Oh, my God. I said this to Lloyd, like, and that's another thing. If you watch that game, there is real stakes in that, because, I mean, you can say Lloyd has many good qualities as a DM. The main one being, he doesn't fuck around. Like, these people are trying to kill you, and they will kill you if you're not lucky, and you have to be smart as well. Yeah, it was a vicious encounter, and it was pretty bad. Like, it was great encounter, absolutely breathtakingly nail-biting in terms of how tense it was, because I, for one, felt I was in danger. My player was my character was in danger. So yeah, and the fact that they, more kept showing up, and the possibility that even more could have shown up after that. Like, he's got it down. Tension. Chris. I don't do roll defense for D&D. It feels clunky, though I have used other systems that it's designed for in that way. Absolutely, Chris. Yeah, I mean, I was more talking about D&D. I'm aware that there are other systems where you do roll for your defense, and I'm sure that's absolutely fine. And interesting. Yeah, definitely. Alexander Kostick. Hi, Rob. Hi, all. Hey, man. How's it going? Carol Dunster. I'm gonna need to learn to survive some of my upcoming games for sure. Just joined this. Hope to see the first part of this too. Yeah, Carol, go and check out the beginning by all means. Basically, it was just a funny line that I put on the front of this video, how to survive. Basically just talking about different ways that you can engineer your combat encounters within the hit role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. Chris Wilhelm, in the last Stratmere game, I played with uneven and dangerous footing. It worked well. One of my favourite things to use is weather. It can limit vision, create difficult terrain, new obstacles, etc. Yeah. And one thing that I really like to do, I was talking about highs and lows before in a combat. If you have torrential rain, for instance, that is only going to become worse by each round. So you have this crescendo effect of it becoming more and more difficult. More and more ground falling away beneath the player's feet on the Cloud March. Less and less time to save hostages, Like, it's a ticking clock. It's just throwing extra things into the mix that continue to rack up that tension, with Lloyd adding more orcs into the fray. So yeah, absolutely, man. A really good idea as well with weather. Weather is dangerous. Yeah. Cara Dunster. Yes, Chris, that added a lot to your battle. Damn straight. So I'm going to hang out for a little bit more. Really, to see what you guys think. Like I say, I am planning on making an actual definitive series of at least how I approach combat to make it interesting. And as Lloyd mentioned before, to make it interesting for people who don't, find it as appealing. I mean, in that scenario, if you're running for a group of people that aren't particularly invested in combat so much, then avoid it completely. Or if you, if you so desire, have a different style of combat, as I was mentioning before, with assassinations. Like, some fights are really cool when they last like 2 seconds. If someone drops out of the shadows, Assassin's Creed style, lands on someone, bang, they're dead, assassinated. That can be equally, if not more, gripping and show off a player's mechanical skill and narrative skill in a completely different way. Chris Wilhelm, the weather as a mood setter and a danger is a great reminder of the Tempest. A great thing to watch for use of weather with story. Yeah, the Tempest, man. I'm assuming that you're referring to the Shakespeare, the Tempest. Yeah, absolutely. Like it's all because of the storm and the reason why the storm is made to happen in the first place. Yeah, it's really good. You're right as well. Like weather is a fantastic way to set mood. If you've had your characters walking in the rain for 4 days, you know, not really being able to sleep because of the fact that this rain is so torrential, you know, they feel exhausted. Their mood is low. They start sort of bickering with each other. Like, it's just like, you know, us. You've just got to think of it like you've got to put yourself in that situation. If you were in that situation, you would start getting annoyed. You would start losing your temper. And that is obviously just speaking into the way that how you can roleplay that particular situation. Chris Wilhelm, yes, I was. Yeah, the Tempest. Yeah, man. I was speaking the last time I was doing this stream about the Tempest, actually. Like, I'd love to do a one-shot based around the Tempest. Because it's a great story. It's a great story. People being marooned on an island intentionally by a powerful wizard that wishes to essentially... who is seeking retribution, who wants revenge. And he maroons them on a weird island full of fey creatures and a crazy-ass monster. And he also has, like, this all-powerful fey servant called Ariel as well. Like, it's nuts. It's a nuts play. He was on one. I wrote a paper about the Tempest, speaking about how it was the antidote to Marlowe's Dr. Faustus. Tempest, it shows white magic. Dr. Faustus shows dark magic. Very interesting to, like, 3 people. So, yeah. I think that about wraps it up. I hope you've enjoyed the stream. I've enjoyed chatting to you guys. Just gonna finish off by saying I have a new page on Facebook, the Performance Check page. I finally got round to doing it. And it's going to be helpful for updates and things. I was subsequently told by Jake that I don't need to go live on a group that I can control to extract my videos like this. So I will be learning from him with that. That was really handy. So thanks for that, Jake. Oh, I see Chris has said something else. To be honest, I'm more than happy to stick around to have some words of wisdom from Drop Dice, because they are wonderful. Since I play a lot of Asian-influenced games, duels play a big part. I think running a few duels in traditional D&D would really help add flavour. Absolutely. It's interesting. Like, I am a big fan of swordplay. Done a lot of stage combat in my career and stuff. And like, I think, like, if I think about it, my favorite film series of all time, Star Wars, like, it's all about duels. It's all about where personal motivations and basically story arcs basically reach ahead at a duel, a climactic duel which ends, which then either develops the story or resolves the story. And yeah, it's it all goes back to bloody lightsabers with me, man, to be honest. And it is something that I will be focusing on as well within the Lore Keepers, which is pretty cool. Also, there was something else I was going to mention about duels as well, but I've completely forgotten. Alexander Kostic. Hey, Chris Wilhelm. Maybe... really bad at this, like, things keep getting in the way. Hey, Chris Wilhelm, maybe you should make a video about how to make duels more interesting. It's a good idea. It's a good idea. Why don't we could even do a thing if you wanted, Chris. We could do a thing sometime. In fact, I remember we were in a hangout like last week, I think it was, and Chris mentioned a system. You'll have to mention the system in this chat. I think it's called A Moment in Time. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. And Chris was explaining, and I think it was me and Lloyd. I think so. Was explaining about this game, A Moment in Time, and it's about two samurai warriors, or at least two warriors anyway. I think it was samurai warriors, standing in a field. It's a two-player game, and you basically role-play the story that leads up to the reason for two people standing in a field ready to duel. And I thought that is a fantastic idea for a game. Duels are fantastic. Like, I mean, if you look to, and not just Star Wars, but Princess Bride, arguably one of the greatest sword fighting duels in cinema history. Like, it is one way to show off some really cool action. It's also, oddly enough, a really great way to have a conversation be exciting. If you want to have some cool character development or revelations, the best place to do it is in a duel. Because not only is it back and forth with swordplay, it's back and forth with mental and mental ability and charisma. So yeah, let's see. Carol does so. We need more law keepers. Carol, yes. Well, it will be in the new year. The next session, it will be in January at some point, hopefully. Yeah, I'm excited. We got some big things happening with the Lawkeepers next session. It's gonna be one where a lot of questions are gonna be answered, and I'm excited because I've been building to it, been laying the groundwork. I think we're ready, and it's going to be interesting and controversial. That's all I will say. Carol. Yes, Princess Bride is one of my favourite movies. Absolutely. It is one of the greatest movies of all time. It is hilarious. It is action-packed. It is witty. It is well written. It is well shot. Like, it's great. Some really good character acting work in there as well. Chris Wilhelm, A Moment in Time. Yes, excellent. I just bought it. It is originally made for Samurai, but they have different players. So they can play different types of warriors. For example, you can do Western Knights. See, oh man, it's such a good concept for a game. That's like a concept for a film, really, isn't it? Like you can imagine an opening of a film, and I'm sure there probably is a bunch of different films, maybe even samurai films, which open with two people standing there in a field, and then you have a flashback, and the entire film is a flashback showing you how they got to that point, and then it culminates in that fight. Or one thing that I particularly love with the samurai films and stuff is when they are both standing there really close to each other. They're just locked on each other's eyes. Again, focusing on people's emotions in fights with utter concentration, and they're standing there for a moment in time. Chris Wilhelm. They're standing there for ages, and then all of a sudden, they're drawn, and they're basically just stood there. And then one falls down, and it's like they move that quickly. It's just a great way to show amazing prowess with a sword. Chris Wilhelm, Shambara films are basically that, old black and white samurai films. Thank you. I'm not that well versed on many samurai films, other than, you know, a few of the obvious ones, but yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so I'll have to talk more about Jules maybe at some point too. I obviously very much adore them. They are very cool. Yeah, interesting stuff. I think I'll leave it there, unless anyone has anything further to add. I'm just going to have another... I said that a little while ago, in fairness. I keep rambling. So, oh, that's one more thing I can add, actually. Something that I've been working around in my mind. Obviously, in addition to me working on this new video series, tomorrow, hopefully, I'm going to be doing a stream talking about Stone Rift. I said I was going to review it. Because of certain issues with my equipment lately, I'm going to have to do it as a live stream and just go through it. But I think in a way that'll be quite cool, because I'll be able to just, you know, candidly, you know, portray my thoughts on the supplement. As I mentioned earlier, new performance check page. If you like my stuff, go and like the Facebook page. That'd be really cool. If you like my stuff on YouTube, go and subscribe if you haven't, or not. Do what you want. We're all friends here, or are we? I usually say that for the end, but I put it in there. The other thing I want to talk about is, for any of those watching who might be interested, at some point in January, I will be running my next edition of the Chronicles of the Nine Kingdoms. If for those who don't know, the Chronicles of the Nine Kingdoms are basically what I call my one-shots that are based in the world of the Lawkeepers. And I'm going to be putting up an interest post soon. Now, what I did last time was I posted this and I said, what would interest you guys more like to explore in my setting? Magisterium, I think I said like Witch Hunters, Court of Whispers, the Underdark Wars, and resoundingly it was the Magisterium. So that one shot was then the Magisterium. I think I will be doing the same for this one. So if there's been any elements, if you watch the Lawkeepers, any elements of the Lawkeepers that you would like to see further explored in a one shot with separate characters, separate storyline, that will in turn inform part of the story, then let me know and post your thoughts in that when I post it. Jesus. Got a few more. Oh my goodness, see me, you keep talking. I love this, to be honest. Like, I love all the questions and stuff. It's great to have these conversations. Such a good community. Alexander Kostic, what about the mechanical parts of the duel? Roll attack and deal damage kind of becomes a killjoy after all cool descriptions of emotions. That is something that I do have a system for. And it is something that I will save for a video, sadly, because it will take a little bit of explaining. But to just let you know, I completely agree that roll, attack, deal damage would get really repetitive. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So, it is heavily narratively based. And again, deals with environmental things, but like I say, I'm going to talk about that in a future video. So hopefully you'll enjoy that if you see it. Wim Tamenga. Watch By the Sword. Great fencing. I think I've seen By the Sword. Yes, you're right. Dennis Kellogg. Kill Bill. Uma Thurman and Lucy Liu, great scene. Yeah, that's a great sword fight. And the fight that precedes it against the crazy 88 is astonishing. It's really cool, really fun, pulpy action. Dennis, would love to get in one of your games. Dude, let's bloody do it. Let's just bloody do it. That'd be awesome, man. You and me too, Dennis. Carol, absolutely. We will, yeah. Spot on. We'll do it. We'll do it. Yeah, so I think that's it. So, one shot, performance check group, more combat videos, Stone Rift review to come. So yeah, thank you ever so much for joining me, guys. You just make it easy. You just fling questions at me. Yeah. Oh, one final thing, Chris. I would be down for a collab on Jews whenever you want. Let's do it. Yeah, I think that's a really cool idea, man. We'll have a big old chat about that. Because like, if there's anyone who knows about like particularly Eastern influences for your role playing games, it's bloody Chris Wellham, isn't it? You just go, let's go talk to Chris. Let's just go talk to Chris, and we'll sort it all out. So anyway, thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll hopefully be doing more of these soon. So check out the Facebook page, and it's been good chatting. Carol says Rob will have no more life outside of AbTab soon. That's true. I won't. I will be indoctrinated into the system. I will be absorbed by it, and then I will become it. And then all of our worst nightmares will be realised. I thought I'd finish the stream, and I didn't press the button. That was rubbish. Finish! It still hasn't finished. Oh my god.